Good evening. It's Monday, February 24th. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Concerns over the coronavirus lead to financial fears as U.S. markets plunge over mounting worries about the virus spreading to global economies. At one time today, the Dow dropped as much as 1,000 points, wiping out its gains for the year. More now from reporter Karen Kaifa.
Face masks, empty tables, quiet streets, all similar to scenes in China during the coronavirus outbreak, but now in northern Italy. By Monday morning, cases there spiking to more than 200 and the largest outbreak outside of Asia. That's prompted officials to issue quarantines and suspend public events like the famed Venice Carnival. The fears taking a toll on those who rely on tourist traffic.
We usually work a lot here in San Marco. This is the cash that I made today. Like I made 10 euros all day long, and it's something that we're not used to. Like we're absolutely not used to this.
Economic concerns also playing out in the global markets. The Dow plunging more than 1,000 points at Monday's open after surges in cases concentrated outside of China, in Italy, South Korea, and Iran. Meanwhile, some pushback on federal plans for U.S. quarantine sites. The Department of Health and Human Services sought to use a FEMA facility in Anniston, Alabama for some passengers from the Diamond Princess cruise ship. Officials there said they're always willing to help fellow Americans, but simply weren't prepared.
You don't bring them to a facility that's not equipped to deal with their situation. That's the problem that we had.
Both Alabama Governor Kay Ivey and Senator Richard Shelby said President Trump assured them the passengers would not be headed there. For KPBS News, I'm Karen Kaifa in Washington.
Another health concern to report tonight, this one involving hepatitis C. A new report looks at the number of cases and who is most at risk. Here's KPBS health reporter Taryn Mento.
Is if they have any fibrosis.
Josie Ruiz points to the screen of a fibroscan in an exam room at the La Maestra Community Health Centers. The ultrasound looks for signs of fibrosis or scarring on the liver, which can be caused by the blood-borne infectious disease hepatitis C.
What we're looking for is the slope to make sure that we are hitting the correct spot.
San Diego experienced a hepatitis A outbreak a few years ago that killed 20 people, most of them homeless. But Hep A spreads primarily by feces and is vaccine preventable. Hepatitis C is not. And a recent county report shows it, too, is prevalent among those without shelter. La Maestra's Dr. Adela Tessier says the nonprofit has a mobile health unit to bring care to the homeless population, but challenges still exist.
So we do a one-time screening for those patients, and whenever they're screened, we need to confirm whether they are actually just being exposed or are actually carrying the disease.
That confirmation requires them to visit a physical location for a blood test like here in City Heights, and thousands of its homeless patients aren't following through, even though the nonprofit provides transportation. La Maestra is not alone. A coalition is working to address barriers like these in a hepatitis C elimination plan that will go to the Board of Supervisors next month. Tessier says progress can be made if vulnerable patients like those without shelter are linked into care.
Convincing them that this treatment, that there's a very high success rate for treatment, and with very minimal side effects.
To improve its care for homeless patients who have been confirmed with hepatitis C, La Maestra is working to get a fibroscan in its mobile unit. But it still has to address the barrier of getting those patients into treatment in the first place. The elimination plan, coming before the board on March 10th, will not only look at those barriers, but how to prevent the spread in the first place. Taryn Mento, KPBS News.
Authorities today publicly identified 2 of the 3 women who were killed when a charter bus rolled over on Interstate 15 in Pala Mesa. Neither of the women were from San Diego County. That accident happened on Saturday. Along with the 3 deaths, 18 others were injured. The chartered bus was traveling from El Monte to Tijuana. NTSB investigators are now on scene trying to determine the exact cause of the rollover. We do know many on board were not wearing seatbelts.
In the game of basketball, in life, as a parent, Kobe left nothing in the tank. He left it all on the floor.
A tearful Michael Jordan joined thousands of fans, friends, and family in paying tribute to NBA great Kobe Bryant at a memorial service in Los Angeles. Also honored today, Bryant's 13-year-old daughter Gianna and 7 others, all killed in a helicopter crash last month. Also today, Bryant's widow filed a lawsuit against the helicopter company, claiming its pilot was negligent. Former movie producer Harvey Weinstein is in jail tonight, convicted in his rape and sexual assault trial. After 5 days of deliberation, jurors found him guilty on 2 out of 5 charges. He could be sentenced to 29 years in prison.
Harvey Weinstein is exactly where he should be now, behind bars. Harvey Weinstein has hurt dozens and dozens of people by his sexual, predatory, rapist, violent behavior. And today there could be no other discussion other than Harvey Weinstein is exactly where he should be.
Sentencing is set for March 11th. Weinstein's attorneys say they will appeal. Thousands of homes, millions of dollars, and a lot of controversy. We're talking about Measure B, the most expensive initiative on the March ballot. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson with a look at the messages behind the money.
A developer for the Newland Sierra housing project in the North County is spending millions to get voter approval to build 2,100 homes, schools, retail space, hiking, and bike trails. Newland Sierra wants voters to back San Diego County supervisors who approved the project 2 years ago. Opponents disagreed and pushed for a countywide vote, and that's why Measure B is on the ballot. But Newland Sierra argues the supervisors were right to okay the project north of Escondido.
Voting yes on Measure B creates a community that is a smart planned community. We're located less than a mile from infrastructure in the major cities in North San Diego County. That includes Vista, Escondido, San Marcos.
Yes on Measure B campaign spokesman Kenneth Moore says the project will preserve 1,200 acres of open space. He says there's already plenty of development nearby, so building here doesn't change the character of the land.
Additionally, we're surrounded by existing development and existing homes. Within a 3-mile radius of the project, there's nearly 33,000 existing homes. And when you go to a 5-mile radius of the project, there's about 90,000 homes that are already built and existing.
And Newland Sierra is making sure voters see their message, saying this land is going to be developed one way or the other. There are mailers, digital ads, and television spots.
Voting yes on B, the Better Choice measure, provides badly needed housing affordable for San Diego County's working families.
Those ads cost money. San Diego County campaign finance disclosure documents show that Newland Sierra LLC is funding 2 committees supporting Measure B. Newland put $5.6 million in one and about $2.4 million in another since the beginning of last year. The more than $8 million is fueling the ad campaigns.
60% of which are affordably priced for working families.
But the fight is not one-sided. Residents opposed to the plan have a rich ally. Campaign documents show that Golden Door Properties, owners of an upscale spa near the proposed community, raised $3.3 million to convince voters the project is wrong for the region. Measure B opponents are also spending on television and digital ads.
The cost of housing keeps going up, and Measure B would make it worse. Measure B, the Newland Sierra project, is a luxury development cooked up by developers who have given thousands in campaign contributions to local politicians.
Golden Door Properties is footing most of the bill to fight Newland Sierra, but one anti-sprawl group has spent just under $3,000 on yard signs. The No on B camp says there are other locals in the fight as well.
This is a community against a developer.
Cliff Williams is a Newland Sierra opponent.
This is a community also that participated in a process where they were told that this land was not going to be developed in a significant way. And the county broke its promise and allowed this development to go forward. And so because they broke their promise, the people are taking back their right to put this on the ballot.
Mailers and television advertising are stock vehicles for driving public opinion, but the chair of the San Diego State University Marketing Department says there's a shift underway. Heather Honay says money spent on digital advertising is eclipsing the traditional ads as a way to reach voters.
I think that trend will continue, and to the degree that we get more and more granular information, there'll be a lot of inefficiencies with kind of this broadcast model of communication. I don't think it's ever going to go away entirely because it is a mechanism to create basic awareness, and I think we'll still continue to see ad dollars spent there.
Even more money could be sunk into the battle for Measure B because there's more time between now and Election Day to make contributions. A yes vote on Measure B allows the development to move ahead. A no vote rejects the project. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Advocates in City Heights are planning a voter education event tomorrow night. They're calling it Let's Talk About It. They'll cover issues on next week's ballot and talk about the census. Organizers say voter engagement campaigns often ignore communities of color like City Heights, and they're trying to change that. The event happens tomorrow night from 6 to 8 o'clock at Our Lady of the Sacred Heart Church. You can learn more about what's on your ballot with the KPBS Voter Guide. It's customizable to your area. You can just enter your location and you'll get a list of all the races and the measures. You can also save your choices to save time when you're ready to vote. Just look for the KPBS Voter Guide banner on our homepage, kpbs.org.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, as coronavirus spreads to more countries, world markets react to the economic fallout. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
President Trump's so-called public charge rule is now in effect. The Supreme Court cleared the way for the rule. It lets immigration officials judge green card and visa applicants based on things like income and education and whether they've used public assistance like food stamps. The White House says it will protect taxpayers. Critics say the change will stop immigrants from using government programs that could help their families. A KPBS investigation has found that pregnant asylum seekers sent back to Tijuana under the Remain in Mexico program are being barred from entering the United States for their court dates. KPBS reporter Max Rivlin-Nadler has the story.
Karina and her husband fled El Salvador in 2018 after she says gangs tried to kill them. We're using just your first name because she's still concerned for her safety. She was processed at the San Isidro port of entry in August of last year when she was already 3 months pregnant. She was sent back to Mexico to wait for her court date in San Diego. But when she arrived at the port of entry for her January appointment, she says Customs and Border Protection agents turned her away. Karina says she was turned away when she was 8 months pregnant. She isn't alone. In recent weeks, at least 4 other pregnant women say they were turned away at the same port of entry, even though they had been given a court date in the U.S. Some were given new court dates for the month after they would give birth. Others say their cases were closed after they weren't allowed into the U.S. for their court date. Sandra was 7 months pregnant when she was barred from entering the U.S. for a hearing earlier this year. She says she feels bad that she wasn't allowed to see the judge. She explained that her case was then closed by the immigration judge because she wasn't at her court hearing. She left Honduras with 2 of her children while 2 others stayed with family there. We're disguising her voice at her request due to safety concerns. She says if she went back, she would be killed. Maya Ibars is an attorney with the group Al Otro Lado, which provides legal assistance to asylum seekers. She says this is typical of the problems with Remain in Mexico, which is also known as the Migrant Protection Protocols, or MPP. She says the U.S. is delaying the pregnant women's court dates to prevent them from giving birth to U.S. citizens.
You know, the MPP guidelines clearly state that pregnant women are not supposed to be an MPP. So the fact that CBP is not only putting them in MPP, but prohibiting them from accessing their court dates is just ridiculous and ludicrous and infuriating.
CBP did not respond to requests for comment about the new court dates for pregnant women, but told KPBS that pregnant women are placed into MPP on a case-by-case basis. Advocates for these pregnant asylum seekers say that conditions in Mexican hospitals for migrants are dire and unsanitary. Karina, with legal assistance from the group Al Otro Lado, got into the United States to continue her asylum case. She's due to give birth this week. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
You've heard the phrase, let food be thy medicine. Well, researchers from SDSU took that ancient wisdom and doubled down, unlocking new insight into how foods can customize the critters in our guts and ultimately our health. I met the scientists behind this interesting study. They are everywhere. They are so important to our health. Artists have captured their likeness in different ways.
Trillions of them.
These tripod-looking creatures are called bacteriophage, more commonly known as phage.
There's about 10 times as many phage in our body than there are human cells.
Phage are viruses that live inside the bacteria that live inside of our gut, constantly influencing our state of health or disease.
We cultivate them since the moment that we're born, and we have them all the way until we're dead, and they're just kind of part of life.
Lance Bowling is a molecular biologist and researcher at San Diego State University. Bowling is part of a team experimenting with the idea that feeding these phage, common everyday foods, could change the landscape of our gut microbiome in what he calls gut sculpting.
And by understanding the effect that these foods are having on our gut microbiota, we can kind of affect our own health in positive ways. I find that really exciting.
He tested 117 consumable items.
Licorice, garlic, ginger, oregano, things like that that you kind of hear that have antimicrobial properties.
Dr. Forrest Rower is a microbial ecologist and biology professor at SDSU who spearheaded the study. He explains how the phage work on bacterial cells.
So these viruses live inside the cells, and every once in a while they get activated, which we call induction, and they jump out and they blow up the cell. The idea of this study was, could we control when do they jump out? And so can we get them to kill a specific set of bacteria?
To test this theory, the researchers first need some phage. And what better place from which to harvest phage than the sewage treatment plant?
It's a great place to find phage, so that's one of the main places that we sample.
And how do you harvest that?
Just with like a little bucket thing. It's not so hard.
They then grow the phage in petri dishes and start feeding them different foods.
See, I did a top drip.
The scientists measure their success by holding up the petri dishes to daylight streaming in from the window.
And that's where the bacteria are being killed by the phages.
With this method, they can see a clearing.
Yeah, that's cool.
Indicating where the phage have killed a specific species of bacteria.
A really clear area, and then there's a second clear area.
The cloudy areas are where the bacteria are still growing abundantly.
Well, if you're trying to change the relative numbers of this bacteria versus that bacteria, could you just eat this stuff and do that?
What is most remarkable is the ability to kill certain bacteria without affecting other beneficial bacteria. Researchers believe this could mean the potential for more gentle options without annihilating the entire microbiome, as some antibiotics do.
So you might get rid of your infection that's causing one condition, but then you're opening yourself up for all of these other conditions.
So we want things that will kill this bacteria but not that bacteria. But even better, we'd like to be able to adjust some of these different types of bacteria. So you may not want to kill all of a particular bacteria off, but you want to kill most of them off. So these things would hopefully be able to do that.
They found honey, stevia, neem, and artificial sweeteners to have the most impact on the phage. They also tested toothpaste.
We think you just kind of brush your teeth and spit it out, but maybe some of that residual antimicrobials that are in the toothpaste are affecting our gut microbiota in ways that we're unaware of.
His gut was right. Toothpaste had a strong effect. But before you consume more than your fill of these powerful phage-inducing compounds, there is so much more to learn about these creatures that outnumber our own human cells.
A lot of the foods are surprisingly powerful antimicrobials, and we just don't even realize it.
And for more specific information on the most powerful foods, you can go to our website, kpbs.org. A new report says more older Americans are smoking pot. Researchers at New York University looked at data from the National Survey on Drug Use and Health. They found that in 2018, nearly 4.5% of seniors reported using marijuana products. Back in 2006, it was less than 1%. Use was highest among women, minorities, and seniors who were married, college-educated, and had mental health issues. Upset parents and teachers are protesting what could be severe layoffs and cutbacks for the Sweetwater Union High School District. All sides are gathering right now to listen as the board explains it's going to overcome a projected $26 to $30 million budget shortfall. Cuts could include getting rid of a dozen learning centers and layoffs to some 200 teachers and dozens of staff. We will bring you a complete wrap-up of tonight's meeting on Evening Edition tomorrow night at 5. Now, the curtain is coming down on the Ken Cinema. Landmark Theaters will not be renewing its lease. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando looks at the cinema's legacy and what its future might be.
From the outside, the Ken Cinema looks like business as usual. But over the weekend, KPBS received an email from Landmark's senior regional publicist, Chris Principio, with a statement from the Landmark home office saying, "After long consideration and much effort, we regret that we are unable to continue operating the Ken Cinema. Landmark will be leaving the building as a tenant next month, but the cinema itself will remain, with the owners of the building having voiced an interest in finding a way to keep the Ken open as a movie theater. Neither Landmark Theaters nor members of the Birkin Trust, who own the building, were available for comment." News of Landmark ending its lease has saddened many in the film community, like Chris Ryle of IDW Publishing. He lived a block away from the cinema for almost a decade.
We saw Bong Joon-ho's the host here, and we're able to then sit and talk about that across the street, having a drink and just sort of replaying the movie. And that's all part of the feel of it, was you could not only see the film and then get back in your car and drive away, but you would stay in the neighborhood and you would then go to the bar, you would go across the street to grab a bite. It was more of just like immersing yourself in the love of film amongst everybody you're around.
For most of the 80s, the Ken was run by Steve Russell, who now serves as executive director of the San Diego Housing Federation.
Every night you had a movie, you had a community that came together. And for one night it might be an Indian village, another night it might be a queer village, another night a Jewish village. But the Ken Cinema was, for that community, the village for the evening. And that was magic. And that's what we're losing more than anything else with the Ken, is a common bonfire, a place that brings us together, where the unintended casual acquaintances can become friends, and you see people maybe you haven't seen in years that have been brought together.
Landmark is exiting as the operators of the Ken Cinema, but this might open the doors to a new chapter in the Ken's cinematic life. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
Science meets art in a new exhibit called Illumination at the San Diego Art Institute in Balboa Park. KPBS science and technology reporter Shalina Chatlani takes you inside.
There are two beams of sound coming from the left side and the right side.
John Burnett is an artist and a sound researcher at the Qualcomm Institute at UC San Diego.
It's as if you're wearing headphones, but nothing's there.
Burnett created 3 different soundscapes. The one he's showing is about touchscreens.
It's like very algorithmic how people interact with their phones now. It's like swiping in various directions and saying yes and no to things, organizing data. And so I used these algorithmic processes to produce the sound in this particular piece. The canvas that's available to artists is quite expansive now at the state of technology.
And the broad range of techniques used here is evident throughout the gallery.
This exhibit features 16 local artists who work together with scientists from 7 different research institutions to put together works including everything from an inside-out shark to tiny little protests.
My name's Trish Stone. I work at UCSD Qualcomm Institute. I knew I wanted from the get-go to talk about revolution, to talk about overthrowing the government. And part of my reason for printing 100 Trishas was because I thought I needed at least 100 in order to accomplish those goals.
Stone worked with the San Diego Art Institute to put this exhibit together. Her work takes computer programming language and applies it to the concepts of protest and community organizing.
Little bits of code language that also have another meaning in English. So things like the code for run is just a /, and that would run a program. But it's also what we tell protesters to do if somebody is too harsh with them.
She created these pieces in response to the 2016 election of Donald Trump, including this video game.
The main character is a Trish, one of the figurines that you see earlier. And she's wandering through this landscape that's supposed to look a little bit like Southern California, but maybe in a fantasy world. In this moment, she's found all the other Trishas, and she can join the protest with them.
This artwork from Stone and the soundscape from Burnett will be featured alongside a number of other science and art pieces at the San Diego Art Institute until May 3rd. Shalina Chatlani, KPBS News.
And unfortunately, all good things must come to an end, and that's what happened to the Aztecs' winning streak. SDSU went down in a nail-biter to UNLV this weekend. The now 26-1 Aztecs didn't play well until the end, and then came up 3 points short, losing 66-63. The team dropped to 5th in the rankings and will look to get another streak going tomorrow night at home against Colorado State. We wish them luck. And here's what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. KPBS goes to Vegas to see how the VA is working to curb vets with PTSD of gambling addictions. And on Midday Edition, we go in depth on lawsuits involving a UCSD anesthesiologist allegedly found unconscious, pants down, on the job. The controversial case and what's being done about it. And that's going to do it for us right now. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us tonight. Have a great evening.